We love old cemeteries and churchyards, so come with us as we explore these places for the past. There are no surprises where we're going next. Oh, I've got a little yappy friend. This is all the newer bit, but we are heading down towards something that looks much more interesting. Now this is another place that I must admit I've never been to before. Driven past it hundreds of times and never actually stopped, so let's go and see what we can find. And the first thing that we find is that the sun and a little bit of mist is giving it some proper old-fashioned atmosphere. You can't beat a wee bit of atmosphere. This is sort of the middle-aged bit, that's the newer bit over there and along here. And then this looks like it might be early 1900s-ish. Let's go for a wee look. So that one's 1800s, that one's 1900s, that one's early 1900s. Yeah, so this is a slightly older part of the cemetery, and they're all starting to topple over and get that sort of interesting jaggedy rotten tooth look that old graveyards get. Anyway, let's go for a walk down this hill and then we'll go and look at the old bit. These are quite impressive stones. It's quite a nice cemetery, this. I'm quite liking it. It's also very peaceful because there's nobody about apart from me, obviously. You can spend forever walking around here reading all the inscriptions. There's Mr. Scott, who was a marine engineer, and there's somebody who was born in Caithness who's ended up in Leven. That's quite a long way from home. It's quite interesting. These stones are all early 1900s-ish, but look at them, they're all quite big and quite impressive. This must have been a very affluent place, even after the shipbuilding had died and the coal mining had gone. And over on this side, this is a stone for wee Jim, who died in 1916, aged 2. And over here, for fans of military stuff, there's leading aircraftsman James Gardner, RAF, who was killed in a flying accident in 1942. Well, this one's quite interesting. Well, it's quite interesting for me. The able seaman Henry Blythe, who was lost from HMS Royal Oak. Now, one day we are going to go back to Orkney and we'll tell you the story of HMS Royal Oak and the story of U-boat commander Gunther Preen. You can probably guess how the two of those are linked. And over on the grander side of the aisle, there's our dear boy Cecil James Hogg, who died, brackets, motor accident, July 1926, aged 17 years old. I'm guessing 17 years old, having a motor car in 1926, yeah, that is quite affluent. And slightly lost over in this little corner of the graveyard, there's a Commonwealth War grave. Let's go and visit this chap. I'm assuming it's a chap, it's usually a chap. It is T.P.W. Dawson, Royal Army Service Corps from the Second World War. So, hello, Driver Dawson. This one's been quite grand at some point, and you can tell it's quite grand because there's the pedestal, and over there is a bit that was on top of the pedestal, which is for Margaret McIntosh and Alan Robertson on that face, and over here is the bit that used to be on the very top. So it's a self-assembly tombstone if you want to come and build that tombstone back up again. Quite liking this. It's very higgledy and piggledy and lots of tombstones that have fallen over. I suppose that's the disadvantages of building your graveyard on a slope. But over here we're heading towards what I think is the older part, so let's go and see what we can see. In another wee corner is another Commonwealth headstone. This is a darker stone, a sort of granite stone, as opposed to the usual white limestone. That is Private Drummond of the Black Watch from the First World War. So hello, Private Drummond. This is such a nice wee graveyard. It's another one where it is quite difficult to work out the sort of chronology of it. It goes up there, on top there, because that is the oldest bit, and that's where we're heading now. And then this is sort of slightly newer, and then all the new stuff over there. But there are mixings of old stones and new stones dotted about. It's very interesting. Well, I find it very interesting. A lot of people back in the day, when they put their gravestone up, it was kind of a status symbol to show how much money and how much status the family had, and this is one of the best examples of that here. From 1934, they've got a big statue on top. I'll bet that was not cheap in 1934. And that one that we saw back down the hill, that was the plinth and the middle bit and the top bit, there's what it would have looked like when it was all intact. And another war grave. This is to Trooper Gumming of the 1st Fife and Forfar Yeomanry. Forfar being a town a little bit north of here, so they were sort of amalgamated into one battalion or one regiment of the British Army in the Second World War. He died in April 1944, aged 21. I'm now at the top of the hill where the oldest part of the graveyard is, so let's go and look at the most interesting bit. There are quite a few of these cylinder sort of grave markers in this graveyard. I've not really seen them anywhere else, but they've got the plinth and then the big sort of cylindrical bit with the inscription on it, and then some sort of urn on the top. And this is David Harrington, who died in 1888, and his wife Jane L. Pankane, who died in 1888, and of their daughter Fanny, who died in infancy. And that's a name that you don't see very often these days. These are really old stones. This is going back to the mid-1800s. We'll do our usual game of trying to find the oldest stone we can find in the place. There is one of those picnic table type grave markers. It's got something inscribed on it, but I can't... Oh yeah, it's like some sort of tool. There's a hammer there, and I am not sure what that is. A helmet, possibly? No idea. But the inscription on that one is unfortunately long gone. With this nice wee stone, we're back to 1829, so we're heading back. Let's see if we can get into the 1700s. Looking for unusual inscriptions. This is in memory of Christian Horn, who died 1936, blah blah blah. For many years, the devoted friend of the family of F.T. Wallace, Royal Bank House. So I wonder if it was the family of F.T. Wallace that actually put that stone up. And I say up, but now it's lying down. There is a little building in there. I don't know if it was like a private family crypt or a mort house. Remember, a mort house is where they put dead bodies to decompose until they were no use to the body snatchers. So we'll see if we can find out. We can't get in there, but there are some quite interesting looking gravestones fenced off behind this rather attractive fence. This is a really pretty wee corner of the graveyard. That big stone there, the big grand one, is to a banker, and the rest of them are all quite old, so he's been put in with the older part of the cemetery. Yeah, and over in this old corner I think we might have a winner, if I'm reading this properly, because I think that says sacred to the memory of Elizabeth Melville, who died 9th of April 1710. Aged something that's gone. So 1710, if that's right, if that does say 1710 there, that's probably the oldest gravestone in the place, but let's keep looking. I'll have to do a bit of research and try and find out where the church that served this graveyard was, or is, because it's not anywhere visible now. But this is a gravestone to the Reverend Dr. David Swan, minister of this parish. Oh, and here's another very old one, in loving memory of David something Bernard, who died in 1770, if I'm reading that properly. Again, quite difficult to read, but you guys see what you think. I think that says 17 something 5, so 1770 something, 17 something something. The oldie worldy gravestones were just so much prettier and so much more sort of iconic than the ones that we have today. These days you'd have a little picture of the dead person up there, which I am not sure about at all. Do you think this was like a stock headstone that was added, wasn't made specifically for the person that's on it? Because 1859, erected to the memory of, and that's in like a sort of font that's curvy, and then William Bell in a really sort of sharp font. We're at the top of the oldest part now. There's that building that I don't think is a mort house because it's got a great big door. And we're heading down here because in front of us, as I fall down a hole, there's quite an old looking gravestone down there, and in front of that there's one of those little winged face things that you get. This is proving to be a lot more interesting than I was expecting. That's a real shame that that one is so far gone. It's not really legible. You can still see some very ornate script on it. I think that's probably quite an old gravestone, obviously, duh. And right next to it, anything that's in the 1700s now is our target for interestingness, and this is a guy called Arthur, born October 26, 1766, died November the 14th, 1771, so he qualifies as interesting. And there's that wee rope and anchor thing, but the middle bit of that one's obviously gone. Right, and that's us just about done. We're finishing off with John Michael, who was a smith in Leven in 1796, or maybe John Michael Smith from Leven, and anyway, don't know. John Michael Smith or John Michael the Smith, no idea, I am now gibbering. Anyway, 1796. The sun is rising in the sky, the mist is burning away, and the atmosphere is only getting more atmospheric. There's another very old stone that unfortunately is lost to the mists of time. AW there. You could probably clean that up and read it, but is anybody ever going to, or is this poor person now all but forgotten? This is quite interesting because it is quite crudely put together. If you look, the The flying face thing is not essential on the stone. I can't quite read what it says, but if you look on the back, where we're going to go now, so if we walk around to the back of the stone, it looks like it's been carved by a bit of a trainee stonemason. Got a face at the top. That is supposed to be the hourglass, the cross spades, the skull, and the crossbones. That is rustic, quite pleasingly rustic. But now we've just found this, I'm going to give you the greatest epitaph ever seen on a gravestone anywhere. Well, certainly our favourite ever. This is sacred to the memory of James Wiley, who was the herd laddie and he was world drafts champion for 40 years. Drafts, I think, is checkers in other countries. It's you play on a chessboard with discs, if that's drafts. Oh, I was just walking out the graveyard and spotted these two things fitted onto the wall, and they're Indian history, because that is Major Alexander Anderson of Montrave, who was in the Madras Engineers. And over here we've got his son Alexander Charles William, who died near Slithet in India, and his other son, and Alexander Johnson himself, who is of the captain of the native infantry, who was killed at the siege of Lucknow, 9th of March 1858. Now, I've heard of the siege of Lucknow, but I couldn't tell you a thing about it, so we might put up a wee card at the bottom here telling you what the siege of Lucknow was. But that gentleman was there. Right, and that is it for Scoonie Cemetery. We'll just have a quick look at this last rather grand stone over here, because it kind of sticks out for being a wee bitty different. It's a reverend who died in 1866, so it was put up by his congregation. We do hope you enjoyed that wee explore. If you've got anywhere you'd like us to visit, please let us know in the comments.